Given that you're graduating, I naturally want to share a few thoughts about basketball. I was planning to talk about something incredibly riveting like how law structures educational opportunity, but then luckily for you, something happened that caused me to change the topic of my speech. The UVA men's basketball team, as you may have heard, won the national championship. And then something else happened. People in Charlottesville lost their collective minds over this. After one game, a bride, fresh from her wedding and still in her wedding dress, ran to join the crowd in the street and crowd surfed in her wedding dress. After another, an alumni couple decided to change the name of their newborn son from Charlie to Kyle in honor of a UVA star player, Kyle Guy. Even now, weeks later, people in Charlottesville can't stop talking about basketball, so that's what I'm going to talk about as well. Now, before you protest, I say this knowing that WISE is not Charlottesville, and I recognize that while some of you, the enlightened ones, are UVA fans, others in this building may prefer Kentucky, Tennessee, or dare I say it, even Virginia Tech. That's why my primary message to you is this: you're wrong. I'm kidding. I'm here to congratulate you, not to convert you. But I do want to talk about some of the lessons I learned while watching the UVA team make its improbable run through the tournament. Because these are lessons that apply no matter what team you're a fan of, or even if you couldn't care less about basketball. They are ideas above all and lessons above all about life, and ones that I believe will help you live the national championship version of your lives. So lesson number one, if you make a mistake, own it and learn from it. Before I give you an example from the men's basketball team about what to do, let me give you an example of what not to do. It's from my life when I was a kid at 12. My friend Greg Iannuzzi and I decided we wanted to try to light a leaf on fire with a magnifying glass. That wasn't working so well, so we poured gasoline on the leaf. That worked really well. So well that a huge blaze erupted in my backyard. We finally managed to put out the blaze, but not before I singed off both of my eyebrows. When my dad got home from work that night, not surprisingly, he was a little puzzled by what he saw, and he brought me out to the backyard and pointed at the huge black spot and said, "Do you know anything about this?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, really. Why do you ask?" He said, "I don't know. I just think you started the day with eyebrows." That's an example of not owning up to your mistakes. Here's an example of owning up to them. Before UVA won the national championship, as you may know, in the tournament the year before, they were the #1 overall seed, and they lost to a 16 seed. This had never happened before in the history of the tournament. Instead of running away from this mistake, the coach, Tony Bennett, and the team owned it. And they used it all year to motivate themselves. They didn't shy away from it, but they learned from it. When you leave here, if you're like me, you're likely to make mistakes. You should expect to make mistakes, but you should also commit to learning from them, and you'll end up, like the UVA basketball team, stronger than you were before. Which brings me to the second lesson. If you want to succeed, work hard even when no one's looking. This year, millions of people watched the UVA basketball team play, but far fewer watched them practice. If you did, the first thing you would have noticed is that the practice always looked the same with the same intensity, whether the team was preparing to play Morgan State or Duke. The second thing you would have noticed is that practice doesn't end at the same time for every player. Over the years, some of UVA's very best players have made a habit of staying after practice just to shoot. And during the summer after last year's historic loss, Ty Jerome, one of UVA's players, was in the gym so much that members of the strength staff had to throw him out on multiple occasions. I say this knowing that many of you understand this lesson intuitively. WISE, after all, was built by generations of coal miners who worked long hours, often in harsh conditions, to make a living and provide for their families. Even today, that work ethic is contagious. It's hard for anyone to come here and not notice it and not catch it. Consider the biochemistry students who barricade themselves all night in the Leonard Sandridge Science Center. Or student athletes like Donovan Montague, Sidney Steinberg, and Kellen Larkin, who wake up before dawn and often come home after midnight, and in between manage to make the dean's list, take part in a day of service, run for office, plan events, and show up at research presentations to support their classmates. My simple advice to you today is to keep putting in the work, the effort, the dedication. In your life, there may be people who underestimate you because of where you're from or what they think they know about you. As someone who grew up in a blue-collar town and was a first-generation college student, I know this to be true. But I also know that you'll find that the harder you work, the luckier you become. The third lesson is that it shouldn't be all about you, but instead about the team. Jack Salt's a 6'10" center from New Zealand and was the only senior on this year's UVA basketball team. He had been a long-time starter, but this year he played fewer minutes than he had in past seasons, in part because of a back injury and in part because another big man, Jay Huff, began to play more. And yet, even as his role changed, Jack's attitude didn't. According to his teammate, Ty Jerome, if you ask Jack to play 30 minutes one game and 5 minutes the next, he'll always give it his all. I don't know of another guy in the country who would do this, but Jack does it every time. Off the court, Jack read to students at local schools, spent time in hospitals with sick kids. And when a teammate of his, Isaiah Wilkins, was struggling with depression so deep that he couldn't leave his room for 3 days, it was Jack who kept coming by and bringing him food and sitting with him in the dark. Later, Isaiah said he wouldn't have made it through college without his big-hearted friend. For Jack Salt, everything was about the team. And there are plenty of people here in Wise who live their lives the same way, as you know. Ask anyone what makes this place special, and you hear one word over and over again: family. Everyone knows and, more importantly, cares about everyone else. Colton Collins talks about Anita from the cafeteria, who always asks how he's doing and is quick with a hug when he needs one. John-Marie Wilson points out that at bigger colleges, nobody really knows the chancellor's staff, but here she can go to Huda for anything. And when Bridget Mccarty's grandmother passed away, professors and students surprised her by attending the funeral. Wherever you go, you'll have opportunities to improve your own lives, and of course I hope you take them. But I also hope you remember that some of the greatest figures in history, and also some of the most beloved people at Wise, have been servant leaders. They've made a difference in the world by helping others, and I hope you will as well. Which brings me to the fourth lesson. By the way, there are 75 of these. I hope I've got just 2 more. The fourth lesson: never give up. In the first game of this year's tournament, the UVA basketball team found itself in a familiar position, down by double digits to another 16 seed team, Gardner-Webb. In the locker room at halftime, Coach Bennett's message to his team was simple. He could accept defeat, but he couldn't accept anything less than every single thing they had to give. In other words, don't even think about giving up. And they didn't. In the second half, they scored more than twice as many points as Gardner-Webb and won the game. And they kept on not giving up the entire tournament. These are the last 3 games of the tournament. Against Purdue, they were down by 3 points with less than 6 seconds left. Against Auburn, they were down by 2 points with 3 seconds left. And against Texas Tech in the final game, they were down by 3 with 16 seconds left. They won all 3 games because they never gave up. I'm sure all of you, at some point, have been told to settle or maybe even to give up completely. I hope you ignore those voices. The fact that you're graduating today means that you've already chosen more than once not to give up on yourselves. And I hope you never give up on Southwest Virginia either, because I believe no one should give up on the places and the people they love. And there is so much to love about this place, beginning with the people. The final lesson is that when you do succeed, give back. Many of you probably know this story, but it's worth retelling. About a month ago, the UVA-Y softball team was on their way to a game in West Virginia when their bus caught on fire. Thankfully, no one was injured, but the bus and some of the team's equipment were damaged beyond repair. As soon as word got out about the accident, the rest of the community swung into action. Whatever people could give, they gave, offering to donate everything from new uniforms to a Chick-fil-A lunch. At the time, UVA had just held a watch party for the title game. So when word reached Charlottesville, our athletic director, Carla Williams, sent $10,000 raised from concessions to the team. There's a verse from Galatians that says, and I'm paraphrasing here, "Don't grow weary in doing good, for in due time you will reap a harvest." I believe this is true, but I also believe that you should continue to do good even after, and especially after, you reap a harvest. This belief is grounded on two principles. First, that with success comes responsibility, and second, that all of us are here only because of the generosity of those who came before us. While we may not be able to pay them back directly, we can do our part for someone else. Bridget Mccarty, the student I talked about earlier with respect to her grandmother's funeral, grew up about 20 minutes from here. It was only after traveling abroad to South Africa and Peru that she fully appreciated what Appalachia taught her: to persevere, to treat others with kindness, to be respectful to those who don't have as much. Now she wants to use her experiences to help people back home. They supported me, she says, and now I want to give back. For the rest of your life, and through all your success, I hope you remember to give back, including to this place and these people who have given you so much. In closing, I want to thank you for inviting me and for tolerating my UVA basketball fandom. I hope it's clear by now that I believe the qualities that made this year's team so special are the same ones that make the college at Y so special, and the same ones that will help you find success and fulfillment once you leave here. It may take time, but if you own and learn from your mistakes, if you work hard even when no one's looking, if you focus not on yourself but on the team, if you never give up, and if you remember to give back, I'm confident you will hold this place in your heart and you'll make the most of what the poet Mary Oliver aptly calls your one wild and precious life. Congratulations, class of 2019, and good luck.